The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Good afternoon and welcome to the Bear Psychology Radio Show with psychologist, author, and speaker, Dr. Anna Baranowsky, where mind, mood, and what matters to you are discussed. We're broadcasting live from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, on Reality Radio 101. So get ready to talk and post a message to us. We are looking forward to speaking with you and responding to your questions. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your host of the Bear Psychology Radio Show, Dr. Anna Baranowsky.
Hi everyone, I'm so glad to be with you here again today. This is the Bear Psychology Radio Show, and I have found the most profound changes occur when a person truly feels heard and understand. I like to think of it as deeply bearing witness to life evolving. We can feel really stuck when we live our fears, stressors, and troubles alone, but when we share and dialogue and feel supported, it provides a powerful foundation for us to move forward in understanding and care. Isn't it time for your evolution? Today, we're very fortunate because we have Christine Arylo. She is a transformational leader, advisor, and coach with an MBA, and she is a best-selling author and speaker. And she's written a book that I think is particularly of interest today. For a couple of reasons. The book is called Overwhelmed and Over It. And, I think it's really important, and it kind of strikes a chord for me in the moment, because with COVID, I have found that, in fact, instead of being less busy, I have become much, much more busy, and life has become more complicated. And I think it's really a useful conversation to talk about this being overwhelmed issue and kind of how we got into such a mess with being overwhelmed. So Christine Arylo, thank you so much for joining us. She's the author and an entrepreneur. She's an author of Overwhelmed and Over It, and she focuses on shifting from overworking and giving too much to empowering yourself to achieve what matters most to you. Hi, Christine. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with all of you today for a good, hopefully juicy, enlightening, and empowering conversation. I can't wait to see where we go today.
Well, that works for me. I think that's a wonderful starting place. And, it's really a great topic because, whether people are, preparing to celebrate Thanksgiving today, or they're preparing for the holidays that are upcoming, even if they're going to be different because of COVID, usually people are preparing something. And in some ways, it might be a different kind of something that requires more thought. Some people are having drive-through visits, or we're in the process of erecting a 12 by 14 tent in our backyard. It's a winter glamping tent because in Toronto, it's cold and I can see snow on the ground right now. The tent isn't up yet, but we're, purchasing all sorts of rebar and, poles and all sorts of stuff that has to be cut. And it's like, it's a big task, and, it's not in my wheelhouse. So I don't really know how to do all these things, but it's really important because it's our way of, hopefully, when things are allowed, to continue visiting people safely. So it's what we do. We pivot and we shift to deal with the demands that we are facing. So whether you're out there listening, and you're preparing to celebrate Christmas in your new way, or Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa, Diwali. Diwali, I think, is just over.
Yes.
Or you've got something coming up today with American Thanksgiving. Are you overdoing it? Are you kind of in a cycle of overgiving and overwhelming yourself? Is this something new? Is it an old habit? Do you feel frustrated or resentful? Are you exhausted? So, I want you to join the conversation, and absolutely feel free to email us with questions or thoughts or comments. Christine is here, and we'll all talk about these issues together. And Christine has a very unique viewpoint on this topic that I really want to learn more about. But I want to learn a little bit about, what brought Christine to write a book like this, because usually it's in lived experience that we kind of come up with our best ideas. So it's instudio101@gmail.com. And as usual, we'll be taking email questions or comments throughout the course of our 1 hour today. So Christine, let's start with you and your story, and what led you to go from working and succeeding really well in your career, and then leaving that and going into the writing, the entrepreneurship that you're doing today.
Well, I can go the two ways. Let's see where we go here. So, taking a little trip back through history, I left my corporate career in 2006 for a couple different reasons. One is I just didn't feel like I had the autonomy and the freedom. Felt very trapped in how I was really forced to work. You had to be in the office Monday through Friday. You had to be there from 8:30 to 5:30. There wasn't a lot of flexibility, even though at the time I was working in a company that is really progressive. It's actually a great company. It was just there were only little things that you could do, but you were really trapped in this, what I've come to call, a very unnatural rhythm for how we operate as a society, how we work, and kind of the constructs we have around time and productivity and face time and office time and all of this. And so I just wanted to be free, really. And I also had a deeper calling. I just really felt like I wasn't making the impact that I wanted to make, that I was giving all this time and all this energy. And I was like, wait, what am I really doing? And it kind of struck me one day when we were in what are called those all hands meetings, where there's 1,500 employees sitting in a room together. And the COO had said something like, we did so good. We're a healthy company. We reduced debt. We are stopping sweat factories. We are giving part-time healthcare to 150,000 employees. But our earnings per share is down because our same store sales over last year, it was a retailer, are down. So no one's getting bonuses. And now, instead of being a $15 billion company, we have to become a $20 billion company, and we have to make more stuff. And I was just like, it was like a Shazam, Anna, and everyone from the universe. I was just like, wait, this value system, this is crazy. What do you mean? Like, we're a healthy company. We do good for our employees, and we have to make more. And I think it's interesting we're having this conversation the day before Black Friday and this weekend and Cyber Monday and just all of it. I just didn't want to participate in it. And so that led me to leave that, to transition out of that, find a more flexible way of working, which included consulting and doing some of that while I created and wrote books and built my coaching practice. And here I am now, whatever that is, 13, 14 years later.
Oh my goodness, you just blew my mind. That Shazam moment where you're sitting there going, why is this surreal? Why is this not enough? Why is it that we're going from a $15 billion to a $20 billion company? Like, what is that about? And how does that really break people? Because, at some point, more is not better. So I think it's remarkable that you were able to look at that and say, this pivotal moment where I can't go back.
Mm-hmm. And it struck me because I was looking around the room, Anna, and everyone. I'm like, does anyone else notice what's going on here? Even my MBA brain is like, this doesn't make any sense. And it's like I saw it all. My first couple books are on self-love, and this book, Overwhelmed and Over It, is really about self-sustainability and empowerment and making choices for sustainability in our personal lives, so that we can then create organizations in a world that actually is sustainable. Because it's not just people who are burning out, right? Our planet is burning out. And so when I saw that, and I started asking a lot of different thought leaders at the time, like, why is this? And no one at that time could really answer the question. And so this is what I do. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go find out. I'm going to go find out. And that led me what's now been this 10, 11-year journey to get into the deeper root reasons underneath why, as a culture, as advanced as we are and as many gadgets we have, and how many stress management is not new. It's been talked about forever. Self-care is something that people talk about and we embrace. Like, how could it be that the statistics show we're less happy, more depressed, more, all of those things. And that really sent me on this journey to get to the roots, both the systemic roots and then also the roots that are inside of us, which is, Anna, such a big part of what you do in this, in your work. And we'll go wherever, but there's a big, huge piece of not enoughness that's running underneath our society and also within ourselves.
Okay, so see, now your book, Overwhelmed and Over It, um, it addresses a certain kind of overgiving, but I mean, I think what you're really addressing right now is a systemic problem, a cultural problem in which it's never enough. And you know, that's problematic because you're right. We are doing so much damage by needing more and more and more and more, and never knowing how to just sit with what is and be nourished by the quiet, because quiet is incredibly nourishing. And it seems to me that most of us haven't yet learned how to sit down and just be.
No.
So, yeah, I mean,
Well,
what it makes me. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, if you look at 2020 through that lens, through the lens of a bigger global transformation that's happening, I mean, I really believe it's the universe is like, look, everybody slow down. Because what happens in this, I just want to say to everybody out there right now who is actually feeling overwhelmed and has tried to, find work-life balance or manage things better or take care of themselves. I just want everyone out there to know it's not your fault that you haven't been able to find this magical solution, because literally those constructs that encompass our society in North America for sure, in Europe for sure, globally, actually, healthcare, education, government, all of it, it's in some ways built for burnout. It's at the core of it is this value system that's about consumption and more and accumulation. And what's happened for us as a people, we are so overwhelmed by the amount of information coming at us and technology that just has only been really around the way it has for 20, 25 years. It's too much. It's too much for our nervous systems. It's too much for our glandular systems, our endocrine systems, our mental systems. And so we've been trying to just kind of tread water, just to kind of keep our, survive really and assimilate into these crazy systems. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and I don't know if you're familiar with her work or not. She was the author of Women Who Run with Wolves. She coined the term the overculture, which I think is so poignant, which basically is her definition is the crazy mad society that we've all assimilated into, and we're just trying to survive within it. Kind of like I use the metaphor of fish in a fishbowl, but we're just trying to get our fish flakes and get our castles and our little houses in order, and we have no idea that we're actually not free and that we're living in these fish bowls. And I think what's happened is the intensity has been ratcheting up. I go back and look at, the work I've been doing, and I'm sure you must see this in your practice too, Anna, that it's been intense for a long time. I mean, I've been talking about intensity and uncertainty for for years. And it's like, if we were treading water for the last, however, 10, 20, 30, whatever years, 2020 was like a tidal wave. And there's no more room. Like, we literally can't do anymore, take anymore, hold anymore. And that is where we're at. And my hope is that we don't try to go back to normal, but we can come up out of this water and breathe and start looking around at our lives and the way we work and the way we live and say what's sustainable and actually what's not. And if humans design the systems, that means we can actually change them, because we're the, like we have that power within us.
Yeah. Pinkola Estes, she actually wrote her books before we saw this massive use of the internet. So she was seeing something that was already written in our in the ways in which human beings were behaving at that point, which was, driven in ways that were not sustainable. And I mean, one of the things that it really speaks to is this issue of kind of workaholism. When work is something that we pour everything into, and it becomes literally an addiction. And it might be because, we have a compulsive need to achieve a certain kind of status and success. We're driven to achieve in ways that are, in the long run, overwhelming and not really sustainable. That, we can pour everything into our work when on a deeper level, we don't feel good enough about ourselves as we are. And the costs are extremely high. And I mean, I work with some really high achieving people in my practice. And, one of the things that I see, and sometimes these people are so wonderfully sweet natured, but they're so frightened of their intimate relationships, or they feel so desperate not to fail, not to feel like they are betraying or letting themselves down or letting other people down. So, this idea that, we can feel overwhelmed by our work isn't necessarily just driven by a desire to care for somebody else, but by a desire to kind of feel like, we're fitting in, or that we're not failing, and that we success is the most important thing, and more is the most important thing. Then often, from a deeper level, our own infrastructure, we cannot tolerate either quiet or a sense of being okay with exactly where we're at, or feeling like, yes, this is enough and I'm okay with this is enough. So there's lots of things to think about in terms of that workaholism piece and how it fits into all of this. But I want to go back to your work. And I want to go back to very specific thing. You developed a scale. I did it. It was to look at your overgiving imprint, and there were a number of elements: over caretaking, over compensating, over connecting, over controlling, overdoing, over efforting, over extending, over focusing on the future, over indulging, over perfecting, over promising, over protecting, and overworking. Woo! So, so when you came out with all of that, and you started to notice these tendencies, what was your kind of awareness of how much people were overdoing?
Well, one of my superpowers is taking vast esoteric things like overwhelm and breaking them down into components, in this case, these 13 overgiving imprints, so that you can actually see inside yourself what's actually driving you. Because you can't change what you can't see, right? And so we try to change, like it's kind of rearranging your furniture in a house that is falling down. You keep trying to rearrange the furniture versus actually looking at the structural issues. And what I found is that we can talk about the systems and how crazy pants the society is, and that we have to look over there. But there also, the second part is the self-induced overwhelm that we create and stress by how we make choices, by how we design our lives, by how we give to work, how we give to relationships. And so as I was researching this and living it myself, you all, because I'll just, hands up for me, I'm a card carrying member in the Impatience Club. I definitely am a recovering, achiever and a person who, operated in a very masculine way, and many times distorted masculine, of driving and striving and pushing and grinding and doing more. And it was completely out of balance with my more feminine energy of stillness and flow and my intuition and many of those things. And so what I found in my research is that if you kind of just take a step back, you've all heard that saying, it's better to give than receive. Have you heard this? Anna, you've heard this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I want to just invite everyone to kind of, this is in Overwhelmed and Over It, I identified these 12 different imprints that we have in our bodies, right? They're not just mental, they're emotional, they're cellular in our bodies, they're energetic. So you can't just change your beliefs or just change the furniture on the outside. You have to actually go deeper. You have to go deeper into your heart. You have to go deeper into the cellular memory. And what I found is that little imprint, it's better to give than receive. If you think about how would that set you up in your life, in your work life, and also in your relationship life, to actually be able to receive the support that you need, the time that you need, the space that you need, the money that you need, right? We operate like banks who give, and then have a hard time taking in deposits. Or if we get the deposit in, we receive the deposit, we just give it right back out again, or we feel guilty for receiving. And this is like as simple as giving a compliment to somebody. We've all done it. Someone compliments us and then we're like, oh, this old shirt, all the way up to how we design our businesses and our organization. There's a lot of us who take over responsibility, who for the world, for our team, for our family. And so what I found with these 13 overs, it's really a way to break down how specifically are you over giving. So your giving and receiving equation is out of harmony, because the new imprint that I invite people to take on is it's better to give and receive. It's just one little letter there. And so part of our work as people is to be in consciousness and awareness in our relationships, in our work, and notice when there's an imbalance in the giving and receiving before it gets to the place of distress, mental distress, emotional distress, a relationship blowing up, being resentful at work, not having enough money. And oftentimes, for whatever reason, maybe Anna, you can shine a light on why we do this as humans. We wait till the distress happens till we're like in emergency, drama, divorce, disaster, versus being proactive and looking at our lives and saying, oh, look, there's that over caretaking. Oh, I'm over, giving in this way. And if you can become proactive about it, like every year I choose one over and I work it the whole year to look at how it's operating in my business, in my life. And when it shows up, I can see it and I can start to make more empowered, supportive choices. So I guess when I'm inviting, I can't tell you all that you're never going to have overwhelm. That would be ridiculous. Of course, it's going to show up. But the difference is, are you empowered to actually make a different choice? And you can't be empowered if you can't actually see it.
Yeah. It is interesting that people will push themselves to the brink before they actually admit that they need help, or that things are really out of balance and they're suffering so much. And I mean, you're right. I mean, that's what I see in my clinic, right? I mean, I'm not seeing people who are like, yeah, this is fine, life is fine, I'm just doing it and it's working for me. The people that I see have already gone beyond their ability to manage with the strain, the stress of life, or the terrible things they've witnessed or experienced. And often we will push ourselves because we get to a place where we say, if I admit to this, it will destroy me, or I'll be so ashamed it'll destroy me, or it'll destroy the relationships, whether the relationships in the workplace, my job, I'll lose my friendship, I'll lose my spouse. And we have a devaluation of ourself and our own worth to such a degree that we believe that if we admit our pain and suffering, or we tell somebody that we actually need some assistance or care or help, things will collapse, they'll fall apart. And if we think things are bad now, they'll be awful if everything falls apart. I mean, we believe this. So we get to a place where we push and push and push until we're not just burning out, but we're hollowed out. And that becomes really hard to come back from. So I love the fact that you're writing about these things and people are kind of contemplating it, hopefully before they get to the place where they are hollowed out by the demands of their life, or believe that, you know, if they say that they need something, that it'll destroy everything that's already in existence. So I have a couple of questions that are coming in, and I'd like to engage you with them. So I'm just going to read through some emails, if that's okay. Here we go. This one is from Mike, and Mike says, hello today. Very good topic, especially in today's volatile climate. And I do not mean the weather. People are overwhelmed with work, COVID, and life. Thanks for the book, Mike. So that's for you. He will know
Thanks,
how
Mike.
to get a hold of that as well. And then we have a question. Hi, Dr. Baranowsky and Christine. The question is for Christine. You're known as the wisdom teacher. What exactly is that? And what do you actually teach on that subject? Thank you and happy Thanksgiving.
That's a good question. So my traditional training is in, and I love that question for today, actually, on Thanksgiving here in America. Couldn't be a better time to ask that question. So my traditional training, like a lot of us, we go into traditional education. So for me, it was the business path and the MBA path and all of that. And at some point, probably around the age of 31, actually, while I was getting my MBA, I realized, and I also had a universal 2x4 that woke me up. So I've been to the place of distress, and I'm happy to share later any stories you want me to, Anna, about it. But we'll just say that mine was the ending of a relationship, my engagement, and I wasn't the one doing the engagement ending. And so that was a big wake up call for me at 30. And I was kind of brought face to face with this question for myself. And it's interesting, and everyone, it's what actually got me into therapy. I had resisted it because I was basically just doing what everybody else was doing, being successful, big job, getting the MBA. I looked happy on the outside. I was happy. I didn't know what I didn't know. And this relationship ending kind of cracked me open. And my inner wisdom, which I had not been listening to at the time, I didn't even know I had one, really said, you know what, Christine, you have a lot of self-esteem, but you don't love yourself. And I was like, that sounds true, but I don't even know what you're talking about. I had no idea. And that same voice spoke to me again in 2006 when I left corporate America and became an entrepreneur. And 6 months later, I found myself on my office floor having my first superwoman sob moment, which is a moment when the pressure was too much. I wasn't having success. I was working 2 jobs, and I just lost it. And that voice came after the sob stopped. The voice came back and it said, Christine, you need the feminine. And I was like, that's true. I don't know what that means. And so both of those moments set me on actually realizing that I hadn't really been prepared in my traditional education, on the job training, to navigate this world. And that set me down what are called basically wisdom traditions and wisdom teachings to study wisdom, which wisdom schools have been around before Socrates and Plato and Egypt and all of that. And all of that wisdom kind of, I don't know, sometime about 2,000 years ago, it just kind of started to kind of go into the distance, and people started to want to be more intellectual and more logical and more rational. And so we poo-poo and woo-woo a lot of the wisdom teachings. But I dove deep at the age of 30. It's now been about 20 years. And studied yogic science and yogic wisdom, feminine wisdom, indigenous wisdom. And one of the things I do actually on every Thanksgiving, I have some beautiful indigenous wisdom teachers that I've studied with, which is, for me, it's about really connecting to the indigenous peoples around the world and being with what they've talked about. Anna, you talked about Clarissa Pinkola Estes. The indigenous peoples and the indigenous wisdom has talked about this for a long time. I mean, that wisdom is so connected to the earth and how the earth actually naturally grows things. And yogic wisdom talks about this, feminine wisdom talks about this. And what I started to see is that all of these different wisdom traditions that have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, passed down from teacher to student, they're all saying the same things. But we're so busy in our lives, and or we've been so indoctrinated to woo woo and poo poo that stuff that we don't actually have access to this deeper wisdom that actually has answers and solutions, and even more important, questions. And that's part of what I do. That's part of my superpower, is bringing the modern kind of world together with the wisdom traditions to find the solutions and ask the questions really that we need to be asking at this time.
Right. And it seems to me that it would also shine the light on places where success looks very, very different than our rational, practical world that we live in today. So success can look like integrating the feminine. It can look like, feeling more at peace with yourself. It could feel like spending time in the wilderness and actually, sitting in nature. Success has a lot of range, and we don't really fully integrate all of that. I want to ask you one little piece that you raised, and you talked about integrating the feminine. So I'm going to go back to that. Now, I want to just say, from my understanding, that this is something not just for women. This is something for all peoples, because, this idea of the feminine is not limited to female. It's a quality that we can embrace that can help people in general harness certain capacities, just like embracing the masculine, which is also really important because these things have different qualities. So can you talk about embracing the feminine and what that looks like, whether it's for a male or female or other gendered person?
Yes. So the absolutely, it's interesting because the word the feminine, instantly people can go to woman, right? Which is part of the thing that we can woo woo and poo poo it and cut it off, and it's like no, that's like we don't want to do that. So I love the just the way that you laid the foundation. In my leadership work, I teach what's called wisdom led leadership. And wisdom led leadership is about bringing both the feminine and the masculine into harmony together, which we all have inside of us. There's feminine power and masculine power. And there's also distorted power. So a lot of what we actually call masculine power in the overculture is actually distorted masculine power. And so the best way I can kind of describe this is think yin and yang, right? So you've heard of yin and yang, right? So you think of yin and yang, this is a Taoist wisdom. And you think of a circle and it has the black and the white, and the black and the white are in each other. That's one way to see it. We both have the yin, which is the feminine, and the yang, which is the masculine. Elementally, you can think of this from an indigenous wisdom perspective. They talk about a lot the elements. So the feminine is water and the masculine is fire. And you need both fire and water together. It's partly, you could see if you look at what's going on in the world right now, like all of that, we have a lack of water and like too much fire going on because we're overvaluing and over relying on the masculine. So let me give you one very like practical part. The best way to think of this is when I teach this, I use a power, it's called a power spectrum. So I want everyone to just kind of visualize an infinity symbol. So it has an infinity symbol. So like, an 8, but it's laying on its side. This is called the power spectrum, and the left side is the feminine and the right side is the masculine. And the symbol of this infinity sign is known in different wisdom traditions as a harmonizer. I actually have a necklace I'm wearing right now that has this shape on it. And then it has in the middle of it, the sun and the moon together. So the masculine is traditionally the sun, the moon is the feminine. We need both. So one specific way this shows up is one power spectrum is the masculine is the intellect. So that would be if you put your hand out on the right, that's the masculine power. On the left is intuition. And when you have intuition and intellect, when they come together and they harmonize and you're using both of them, what it does is it gives you access to an elevated level of leadership, perspective, understanding. And in this case, it gives you access to wisdom. So the distortion in this power spectrum is if you're only over in the intellect and you go off the harmonizer, it's where we are too rational and logical, and things that you can't see with your eyes or you can't prove it by a scientific study, they're poo-pooed and they're woo-wooed. And it's if we're too far over here, we will discount the feelings and the power of feelings and the power of what are called the subtle realms. And it becomes very mental, you all. So we start to make decisions for our lives and in our culture just from the mind. And the human mind, depending on how banana pants it is up there, can create a lot of destructive things. Like I'm pretty sure the atomic bomb was created from the distorted masculine energy, because the intuition, and again, this is all human, we all have these elements in us. The intuition lives in the heart, and the intuition lives in the body. And the intuition lives in what the yogic sciences call the imaginal realm, and what the scientists call the quantum field. But if you're too far over in intuition, you're flighty, you like you're not grounded in any kind of physical reality, and you can just kind of be like a wisp, you know. And you also have like you misread situations and put too much meaning to things that don't actually have meaning. And so what we're doing, I think, as a culture, I know what we're doing as a culture is we're learning to value these things in ourselves, and then change, like live that way. So like another one, for example, is stillness and swiftness. It's just coming back, Anna, to what you've been saying over and over again. Stillness is the feminine, swiftness is the masculine. The owl is the animal that really embodies this. When we're in both of these, we move in aligned action versus being busy and wasting our life force and our resources on too much activity. But for most of us, it's hard to be in stillness. I know for myself, when I first started exploring the feminine, I would literally sit on the couch and start twitching if I had to sit still and not do anything with my mind. And like my body would twitch because my nervous system wasn't able to just be. And my partner is the opposite. He could be all day long, but he is challenged more on moving into action. And a lot of times in our relationships, we will choose polar people to ourselves to learn how to really be in harmony and balance within ourselves.
Yeah. Now, there are a couple of things that you've said, and one that really stands out for me that seems to lead towards how we can get so busy in our lives, and it could actually not even be generated from what we know with inside of ourselves is correct and true. You know, that feminine piece where we have to actually pay attention and say, what is right for me right now? You know, what do I need to listen to? You know, what is the correct? This is more leaning into the kind of the wisdom teaching. It requires us to attend to what is actually surfacing, not the screaming voice, but rather the paced and clear statements inside. Yes, I know this will be meaningful, and how we can easily fill up our lives with chatter or with busy activity, and it's just filling up space, as opposed to figuring out what is it that is truly on our path. And I think that is one of the most difficult things for people to actually achieve, to just say, you know, like I get a lot of requests to do a lot of different things. And a few weeks back, I got an invitation to sit on a board that I really, really would have loved to sit on, because it was, you know, it's everything that I do. And it was super interesting. And the team of people on the board were wonderful. And, you know, the cause is fantastic. But it's like, I don't have time for that right now. And it was, you know how hard it was for me to say no to that? It was like, oh boy. I had a very hard time saying no, because it was drawing me in. But when I really sat quietly and paid attention, it was so off for me to actually do it. Like the actual doing of it, the saying yes to it would not have served me in any way. So that's kind of the piece where it's like, sometimes it feels very delicious to do something, and still it is not the correct thing at this moment in time. So I just want people to take that on board, that, things can seem like, yes, somebody's asking you to do something and you're flattered and it's wonderful, but it is just not correct because it is not within your own truth. It is not on your path. It will not serve you in the long run, but it will be a lot of extra work for you. And being able to say no, even though, you might want to do it, can actually be saying yes to yourself. I want to go on to a couple more emails. This is from Sean, and Sean says, "Hi today, happy Thanksgiving. This topic is so important today because of COVID-19. People are isolated, scared, and worried about not achieving and living the dream instead of slowing down and taking care of themselves, both physically and mentally, and loving themselves. Where can I get Christine's book?" Christine?
Good question. Overwhelmedandoverit.com. That's the best place to go to get the book. And on there, you will find lots of different places you can get it from, all over the world. And then also there's a video on there and about me just talking about some of these things. And then there's also an Am I Overgiving quiz that's on there that helps you identify which of the overs might be running through you. So
Yes.
overwhelmedandoverit.com is the best place to go.
Yeah, and do the quiz. The quiz was quite interesting. I really enjoyed doing that, and I like the way it broke down. You can kind of see where you were overdoing and over giving. And actually, this leads to one of my questions. I have had such a busy week because we run a charity, and our wonderful charity director, Yara Sack, she has made a major pivot. She is now a member of Parliament in Canada, moving from our small charity into a big portfolio. So we've lost her, which means I have to take over a whole lot of things, at least for a short while we're putting everything in place to fill her spot. We're dealing with a increasingly busy and demanding clinic. We are kind of addressing kind of having a 7-month-old puppy in our home. And none of these things are things that I can just put down. So I have created a life in which I love a lot of what I do, and I usually leave sufficient time. But I think this is true for most people. There will be moments where the demands are much more than your normal manageable but complex and full life. So what do you do when life spirals out of control?
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's this kind of like running a marathon. You don't wait till the day before the marathon to start training for the marathon, you all. And in some ways, that's kind of what's happened to us. When I was going out and doing corporate speaking and stuff, every time I would go into a room, I would ask everybody, how many of you have a consistent daily morning practice that you do to connect to yourself, protect your energy fields, and really set yourself up to be centered within yourself before you go into your day? Inside of a business professional setting, less than one person usually in that room would raise their hand. If I'm out doing a personal development retreat or something like that, maybe I'll get 15% of the room. And here's one very practical thing I just want to share with everyone. If you do not have a daily morning practice that you do to connect to yourself physically, to connect into the universe, whatever that is, just something bigger, to your own heart and what you need, and to also feeling connected with other humans or other life around you. And then know how to really protect your energy field, or what I call strengthen. Well, I don't call it, the yogis call it, but I call it too, strengthen your magnetic field. So the earth, just like the earth has a magnetic field that protects it, we also have an energy field around us. And if we're not strengthening that, or it gets weakened, it allows lots of other stuff to come in. So one of the core things I teach people is that we don't wait for, a Hawaiian vacation to create space in our lives. And during times of intensity, our practice is more important than ever. So one of the ways to think about your life, number one, is that instead of trying to find balance, you want to cultivate harmony. And we're going to go through our lives where there are times, just like a symphony or an orchestra, where our lives are more lyrical, there's more space, there's slower. You're going to go through times when it's more like a flow state, like active, and you can maintain it. And then there's what's called intensity times. And what you're talking about, Anna, right now, and what most people are experiencing is intensity. And intensity is like staccato in a symphony. You can't play it for a long time. You can't maintain it for a long time. And when you're in it, you need to make sure you're breathing, because otherwise, imagine like a tuba player playing to a staccato or a fast tempo for days and days and days. Eventually it's going to fall. He's going to fall over because he can't breathe. Or a violinist, their fingers are going to get bloody. And so for me, in addition to making sure that I bookend my day every day, the first hour and the last hour of my day, where I don't interact with the outside world until I've connected with myself. And it doesn't mean I sit on a cushion for an hour. It just means I have different practices that I just do to get myself centered. And at the end of the day, how am I downshifting that last hour? And then in times of intensity, like now, I make sure I also downshift every week. So on Saturdays, those are my downshifting days. So I downshift out of intensity into a flow. And if I can get into like a replenishment state, or literally for Saturdays, I don't let myself think. That's my rule. No thinking. It's what I call Sabbath. It's my Sabbath space day. And if I don't give myself that breath, that deep inhale weekly, I am not myself. I get stressed out. I get frayed at the edges, is like what I like to say. And so these little spacers in your morning and your evening, spacers in your week, if you can't do a full day, a half a day, you need, Wednesday mornings are my space mornings. I don't schedule anything until 11 o'clock. So it's like, how can you put space to breathe in your day, in your week, in your month, and in your year? And this is how you're able to actually meet intensity, because you have this rhythm and this practice already in place.
I love that. I love the fact that you're talking about the importance of that, because, people, I have a lot of people who are in my life and a lot of people who I engage with, and I've got a big team. And sometimes I hear from people, I don't know how you can do all that stuff. And actually, Christine, the only reason that I can be productive is because I do exactly that. Every morning I wake up. Everybody I know personally knows this about me, that I wake up in the morning and I do a yoga practice. And I've been doing this since I was 16 years old. It just became part of my life. I was really lucky. And I think that it laid the foundation to allow me to do a lot of great things. But just so people are clear, the listeners who are listening today, it's not that I do it and I got lucky. If I didn't do it, I wouldn't be able to accomplish the things that I can accomplish. It's like I wouldn't have the bandwidth. Okay, now let's get back to our listeners. I know with COVID going on, Christine probably is not doing any live talks anywhere, but after this crisis is over, does she do live talks and seminars? If so, where can I keep up on that information? Thank you.
Oh, well, so I was having a moment of like, I love when we get together in person. It does.
Yeah, I know.
A wistful moment. I'm like, oh, I love doing in-person retreats. So I do in-person retreats, and I do workshops, obviously in person, but I also have been doing things online for over 10 years. I was kind of an early adopter. I have a complete video set up here, and I also have a podcast. And so the best way to stay connected to me is through my podcast, which is called Feminine Power Time. And that's for men and for women. And or go to my website, Christine Arylo, and it's ARYLO.com. And I have a wisdom letter I send out twice a month, and that always has all the events and everything. So I actually just did a live 90-minute webinar on intuition the other day. And I in December on the 20th, I do a reflection ritual that I do every year for people around the world that you can do right from home. So there's lots of those things still happening because I've been doing them for a long time. So doing them, I'm like, oh, I'm completely set up for this. No problem.
Oh, that's fantastic. This one's from Yola, and Yola says, I love that saying, universal 2x4. While it's so true for so many, it takes a miracle for people to wake up. Thank you for reaching out, and thank you for telling us your stories. They've made my day today, and I feel a lot better. Oh, thank you so much, Yola. That's so nice. It's so great to hear from people, to really be able to understand, what the listeners are thinking, because, this is how we have a dialogue. And although we take your messages through email, it's a very real feeling when we get to
Mm.
read them online. So I really appreciate that. And this is from Adam, who is asking, what is Christine's web presence? Yes. So I think you already gave that, but if you want to just give that again.
Yes, ChristineArylo.com, and that's ARYLO. Or if you just go to Overwhelmed and Over It, that page actually sits on my website. So that'll be a good place to connect, and everything is there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. This is from Ben. Hi, Ben. This is a very interesting show today. This question may be a little off topic, but here it is. With everything Christine is talking about, does diet and exercise play a role with everything that she's telling us? I'm just very curious if these things go hand in hand with her teachings.
Absolutely. I mean, it's what we put into our bodies, what we ingest. When I say what we ingest in our bodies is, whether it's energy or emotions or physical. Even the yogis talk about in yogic science that, and I've been doing yoga for about 20 years. So also very lucky that it found me. But they also talk about, like, you need to move your body. You need to move your body. And it was one of the things when the COVID really got ramped up in the early part of this year, and they started outlawing being outside. I was like, no. I'm like, that we need to breathe. We need to be on the earth. We need to move our bodies. Really important. I mean, I was just jumping on my rebounder for about 3 minutes this morning after I did my yoga practice. And one of the things I love about when I think of diet to me is a noun, not a verb. So diet is about your relationship to food. And one of the wisdom teaching that I really appreciate the most around food is Ayurveda, which is the medical kind of connection to yogic science. And it teaches, as does a lot of other indigenous wisdom traditions, to eat in alignment with the seasons. And so what's so beautiful about Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and these wisdom traditions is we shift on the equinoxes. So this is one of my practices that I would say top 3 ways I stay out of overwhelm and I keep my system clear and vital and strong is I live with the seasons. So as the seasons shift, which are the 4 major shifts are the equinoxes and the solstices. And those equinoxes are times for rebalancing and reharmonizing. They're perfect times to actually shift how you're exercising, how you're moving, what you're eating. And then December solstice is all about reflection and slowing down and really pausing to say, what happened this year? And really allow yourself to receive the successes that you've had, and also release the challenges. And then summer solstice is all about like expanding and where do I want to put my creative life force at. And as you start to move and practice and work with these cycle shifts, and it doesn't matter where you live in the world, we all shift at these 4 times. The wisdom teaching, and I found this to be true in my own business and life, is that you come into more harmony and more balance. And so what might be okay for the winter where we eat heavier foods, and I don't know about all of you, but I drink more coffee, I drink more wine. And then come March equinox, I'm like, oh, time for a shift, And so it's like my habits before, they're not bad. It's just like, oh, time for a shift. And then you're in alignment with what's actually happening in the natural world. And that sets your natural rhythm to a much more supportive, sustainable, and healthy environment.
Magnificent. So I want to go to this idea in your book around receiving support. I know you spoke about it a little bit, but the part that I always find really interesting is what it is that holds people back from receiving support. Like, kind of it's an inner feeling that people have. When they think about actually being on the receiving end, what this is in your book, it's what belief or fear within me would stop me from receiving support. And maybe if you wouldn't mind just taking a few moments and speaking to that so that, we can kind of shine some light on the kind of the inner stuff that creates this rigidity or this block to receiving.
Yeah, so I would love to invite everybody to say these words to yourself or out loud. I need support. I need support. I need support. And just notice how that feels in your body and your mind, and like, like what that, I mean, I can feel it emotionally just as I'm saying it.
So can I.
Right? We
Yeah.
have some wires twisted inside of us that to need things is to be needy. And to need support is not needy. To need support and know the support you need in order to either accomplish what you're setting out to achieve and or to deal with the reality that you're facing is actually wisdom. I mean, that's what a smart person would do, is like, okay, this is the situation. What is the support that I need? But we have this imprinting in us that to need support is to be needy or is to take something from somebody else. And what I found in my own life, and it goes back, this is all about receiving. I mean, the dealio that I see is we've been bred to be strong achievers. That's okay in this society. To be a selfless caregiver, that's also okay. But to actually be a receiver, like guilt, guilt. And I really would like for us to look at this feeling of guilt around support or weakness, because to need support is human. And I've had many what I call holy receiving lessons where I found myself in a situation that I couldn't actually take it on. And if I did, I knew I was going to buckle at the knees. Like when my husband had a stroke at the age of 42, and we were nomads. We were living around the world at the time, and we were running a business, two businesses, and that was a moment where I really had to, it broke open my heart and it broke open my capacity to receive. Friends let me live with them. People gave me a car. Like there's just like all these different things that happened that pushed me to open up my ability to receive. And it's getting like tears in my eyes because this is the human way. Like, this is what I think. I mean, this is the perfect question to ask Anna today on Thanksgiving, and is like, giving and receiving is a symbiotic relationship when it's done from a place of wholeness and love and harmony and a common desire to create a world in which everyone is cared for, which is completely possible in this world. And when we don't feel lack or scarcity, or if I take, someone else isn't going to give, or the vice versa. And so one of the things that I would just ask everybody, three questions. One is, if you look around your life right now, this is the perfect time to say, what is no longer sustainable in how I'm working, in how I'm relating, or how my life is currently designed? And really give yourself the space to ask that question. And then two, ask yourself, well, what is really feeling supportive? What is really feeling supportive? And acknowledge and be grateful for that. And then lastly is like looking forward into 2021 and knowing what's coming. Ask yourself, what's the support I need? The emotional support, the physical support, the mental support, and the spiritual support. And give yourself the space to think about that. And you don't have to know how you're going to get it or how you're going to pay for it. The first step is ordering it from the universe and acknowledging that you actually need it. And then that's where miracles happen. At least that's how I've experienced it in my life.
Wow, that is absolutely beautiful. I just love, how you've conceptualized the asking for help and the receiving of help. Now we are going to stop in literally 3 minutes. So we've got 2 more emails that just came in. Let's see if we can actually, as best as we can, if possible, respond to these. This one is from Brad, and he says, how do we actually know if we're having issues with all of this without going through what Christine went through, having a breakdown at work and sobbing uncontrollably? That is very scary. Thank you.
Be aware of your emotions and be aware of your body. Your body will never lie to you, and your emotions will signal that something's out of whack. So if you're feeling like just so be aware, like your body will get contracted, it will feel anxiety, it will feel frustration. When your body and your emotions don't feel in harmony, slow down, go deeper, and ask, what is my body trying to tell me? And what is my heart trying to tell me? And that will be your portal through. Pay attention to your emotions and your body.
Love this. You'll love this because the last one really addresses exactly what you're just talking about. This is from Alexandra, and she says, thanks to you and Christine for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. Can you elaborate more on what centering yourself and connecting with yourself looks like? And isn't it beautiful that so much of it really relies on us leaning in and giving ourselves space and time for the truth to come out and actually to listen to it. Because I look at emotion as our wisdom system.
Mm-hmm.
And when we really learn how to pay attention to that, we've got power in a way that we would never imagine. So, Christine, it was lovely speaking to you. Do you have any last words before we sign off today?
I would just, I think just what I mentioned is we're ending a year and going into the new year. It's known as the Kiva time in the indigenous wisdom tradition. So it's the perfect time to go within, and just even some of the questions I've asked you, there's lots more questions in the book. And I know you're here asking inquiries and like, it's time to go within. And then February, March, we start to kind of emerge from the outside. So I feel like the what's going on in the world and all of it is really an invitation for us to slow down, go within, and get curious about where you are and what you want to create. We have the power within us to create a new world. I know that to be true.
Thank you so much for joining us, Christine Arylo, and she has a big web presence. You can find her books and her quiz and everything online. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Christine, and hope that we'll get a chance to speak again.
That sounds good. Thanks, Anna, and everyone.
Have a great day, and everybody be gentle to yourself.
Thank you for listening to the Bear Psychology Radio Show with psychologist, author, and speaker, Dr. Anna Baranowsky, right here on Reality Radio 101.